Hey there, Deep Inspiration up here. I've set up 2 Huddle01 nodes and pools myself, and I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step guide on how you can do the same using a Linux VPS. Now, if you've never worked with a Linux VPS before, don't worry, my tutorials are always beginner friendly, so you would be able to follow everything that we'll be doing today. The Huddle01 team did a very good job in terms of their documentation, so all the commands that we're going to be using today can be directly found on their official docs, which means that you can just do a simple copy paste without you having to type all these commands yourself. And also on my website, I have an extended version of the setup, which includes how to connect to the VPS server, how to export your nodes, all consolidated into one post. And I'm also going to provide a link to this blog post in the description section. With every node that we set up, the first thing that we want to look at is the hardware requirements to set up these nodes. With Huddle01, there are 2 types of nodes that you can set up. And with all these nodes, you would be able to create a pool where other people can delegate their keys to you, and you earn commission based on how much percentage that you set for your pool. As an example, I do have 2 pools currently on the Huddle01 network. One pool is the Deep Inspiration Hub pool, where I do this with a 0% commission because I set up this node for my community to delegate their keys to me without having to pay anything. Now, with this first type of node, you can only have 10 delegations on your pool. Hence, the minimum requirements for setting up this kind of node or pool is very low. There is a second kind of node that you can set up, and as you can see, with this kind of pool, you can have up to 40 delegations on that pool. That means that 40 people can delegate their keys to you, and you take some commission from their reward. In this example, for instance, I took 1% from anyone who delegates their keys to me, and this is very nice because it gives you extra rewards with respect to your node setup. So the hardware requirements depends on if you want to go for the 10 delegation pool or if you want to go for the 40 delegation pool. Now let's look at what this means. If you want to go for the lower end setup where only 10 people can delegate their nodes to you, you would go for the minimum hardware requirements, which is 4 CPU cores, 4 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of disk space. If you want to go for the higher end where up to 40 people can delegate their keys to you, then you need to go on the higher end where you need a minimum of 8 CPU cores, 4 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of disk space. Now the very important thing that you need to take note of, the internet speed or the bandwidth requirements. For the 10 key delegation node, you need just 250 MB of internet connection. However, for the 40 key delegation pool, you would need at least 1 GB of internet on your VPS or any system that you are setting this up on. I do have some recommendations because I have tested a lot of VPS servers for this Huddle01 node. I do have some that works for the minimum pool, and I have some that works for the higher delegation pool. I'm going to show you all these recommendations shortly. Very important, if you want to set up this node, remember that you're going to have to open some ports, for instance 14000, 14001, and so on, to allow the node to be able to communicate to the network. If you're setting this up on your home PC, then you're going to have to enable these yourself. But if you're setting it up on a VPS, most of the time all the ports are open, so you do not need to do any extra thing to make the ports available to the network. Now, in terms of VPS providers that you can use for the network, if you do have a VPS that is powerful enough, you could also set up this node on that. But if you do not have a VPS, then I have a few recommendations for you. With respect to the lower end, that is the 10 delegation pool, you can go with Contabo. They typically change their price a lot within the recent days. For instance, you can go with a Cloud VPS 20, where you're going to be paying 4.95 euros a month. The price might be different depending on your location, but you're going to get 6 CPU cores, 12 GB of RAM, and 200 SSD, which is way more sufficient to set up the Huddle01. They used to have a lower version which was exactly 4 CPU cores, but it appears they've changed again. Maybe as at the time that you're watching this video, there would be a lower version that would be available, but make sure that you pay attention to the minimum requirements, which is in this case for the lower end 4 CPU cores and 4 GB of RAM. So again, for the 10 delegation pool, this would be sufficient to run the node. And also I tested the internet speed of the Contabo service, which is specifically this one, and the speed was about 300 to 400 megabytes per second, which is more than sufficient for the 10 delegation pool. However, for the 40 delegation pool, where you need an internet speed of about 1 gigabyte of internet speed. Even when I went with this option here, which is technically possible to set up this node, the internet speed that I realized was still around 300 megabytes per second. And that is why for the 40 delegation pool, I would rather recommend that you go with Netscap. So they have, from what I tested, 1 gigabyte per second of the bandwidth, which was very good to set up this node. And in this case specifically, you would go with this option here, which is a VPS 2000 G1, 8 CPU cores, 60 gigabyte of RAM, and 512 gigabyte of SSD. And with this particular VPS, that is what I'm using for my Huddle01 node, and the internet speed is indeed higher than Contabo. So if you want to purchase the 10 delegation pool from Contabo, just come to their website. I'm going to put my referral link for all these VPS providers in the description section, and I'm very happy if you sign up with my referral link. Now for Contabo, just click on select here, choose the duration with which you want to set up the node for. So typically, the longer the duration, the lower the unit's monthly cost is going to be. If you're not very sure VPS setup is going to be the way that you would go, my recommendation would be to go with a 1 month option where you can cancel your VPS anytime. But if you're pretty confident that you want to go for this, then you could go for the 12 months option where you pay $5.95 a month. For the region, you can leave this as European Union because typically if you change the location, you pay an extra fee. But for Huddle01 network, probably it makes sense to diversify your pool a bit just to help the concept of decentralization. As you can see currently, they do have other regions available where you wouldn't pay anything extra if, for instance, you switch from European Union to the United States. Now for storage type, you can basically stick to the free 200 gigabyte SSD, or if you want, you can get the 100 gigabyte NVMe, which is a faster read-write speed. But remember, the minimum we need is 50 gigabyte of storage. So either this one or this one would work for you. I typically went with this one because I always want to have a bigger storage. Now in terms of operating system, I typically use the Ubuntu 22.04, but it's very important for this setup that you choose a Linux operating system. Probably the 24.04 works, but I haven't personally tested this as well. So you can leave this as 22.04, then you can proceed to the next step. Now for networking, you can leave everything the same. Add-ons, you can leave everything the same. And then here, very important, this is where you're going to put in the password that you're going to use to connect to the VPS server. Make sure that it's a password that you're going to remember, because if you forget a password, you wouldn't be able to connect to the VPS server. So just put in the password, proceed to make the payment, and after that, they will send you the credentials to connect to the VPS server. If you want to purchase with Netscap, mine is in German, but probably from your location it's going to be English. If you want to purchase from Netscap, the principle is the same. Here, the VPS 2000 is what I recommend you go for the 40 delegation pool. If you want to go with Netscap also for the 10 delegation pool, you can also go with this one here, which also meets the minimum hardware requirements. Now to purchase, all you have to do is to click on order now, and then you can basically leave everything as a default. Here as well, if you go for 12 months, it's cheaper than if you go for the monthly option. And then with Netscap, you don't really anything in there. They would send you the password that you're going to use to connect to the VPS server. So you do not put in the password yourself. If you want to change the password later, you can do so, but typically they send you the password by default that you can use to connect to the VPS server. So after you have purchased the VPS, whether you bought with Contabo or you bought with Netscap, you would get the credentials to connect to the VPS server. And in the next stage, I'm going to show you how you can connect to the VPS server. Now, as an example, if you purchase the VPS from Contabo, you would get an email that looks like this. And in this email, the most important thing that you need is the IP address. So they're going to show you the IP address of the VPS server in the section here. Mine is in German, but the layout is going to be the same for whatever language that you would have. So you get the IP address for the VPS server, and then you would also get the username. With most of the VPS being Contabo on Netscap, the username is always going to be root, and the only thing that you're going to need is the IP address. The password, you set it up yourself. For Contabo or with Netscap, they would provide a password for you to connect to the VPS server. Now to connect to the VPS server, there are nowadays several applications out there that you can use. If you want to download an application, you can, for instance, use Putty, which is a free application that you can use to connect to a VPS server. If you do not want to download any external application, you can also use an inbuilt console both with Mac OS and with Windows OS. Windows OS application that you would use is called PowerShell, so Windows PowerShell. And if you open Windows PowerShell, it opens this terminal that we have here. If you're using Mac OS, the application is also called Terminal. How you're going to connect to the VPS using Terminal or PowerShell is identical for both cases. Now for the rest of the tutorial, I'm going to be using PowerShell, but again, you can choose any application that you want. Now to connect to the VPS server, we're going to use the following commands. Type SSH space, type in the username of your VPS server. Remember, in most cases, it's going to be root. Then type @ and then put in the IP address of your VPS server. And when you're done, just press enter. If this is the first time you are connecting to the VPS server, you would be asked if you are sure of this connection and if you want to add this fingerprint to your VPS server. In my case, I'm pretty sure this is the case, so I'm going to type yes and I'm going to press enter. In the next stage, you're going to put in the password of your VPS server. Now you can type this in singly and then press enter. Now here you don't really see anything on the console where you're typing the VPS password. So if you have a very complex password, just type it somewhere safe, copy the password, come into the console and right click into the console. So whenever you right click, it pastes whatever that you have in the clipboard and just press enter. And you can see that I'm connected to the Contabo VPS server. So I'm going to clear the screen by just typing clear, and then basically we can start with the node setup. Now what I'm going to be setting up today, I'm going to be setting up the 10 delegation pool, but the process is going to be exactly the same whether you go for the 40 delegation pool or the 10 delegation pool. The only difference would come when we are registering the pool on the network, and this also I'm going to show you. Now, as always, what I like to do when I open a VPS before I even start any installation is to update the Ubuntu operating system. Now you can do so using this command here and then press enter. Again, all the commands that we're going to be using today is going to be provided in the blog post and also already available in the official Huddle01. So you do not need to worry about typing these commands singly. Now, between my steps that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be clearing the screen by typing the command clear. Just because I'm doing a tutorial, I want to keep it clean so that you guys can see whatever I'm doing, but you do not need to be typing this clear during your installation. You can just type the commands after the other. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install an application that is called curl, because we're going to use this application, download or to pull the Huddle01 software. Just put in this command here and then press enter, and then curl is now installed. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install an application called FFmpeg. That is basically an encoding software that allows the Huddle01 media node to operate. Now to install this, just put in this command sudo apt install ffmpeg-y, which installs the application, and then the -y just allows it to install without it asking you to confirm the installation. Just put in this command here, and then this would also be installed. Now, after this is installed, I highly recommend that you double check that the installation was successful. Now, you can do so using this command ffmpeg -version. And all this does is it tells you the version the plugin installed, which typically means that the application was installed correctly. So in my case, you can see that I have the version 4.4.02. By the way, very important, the command that I used in my case is because I'm using Ubuntu operating system, but for instance, if you're using a different Linux distro, also on the Huddle01 docs page, you can find a link to Hostinger, which basically shows you the command line you would use to install this depending on which Linux distro that you have. For instance, you can see in the case of Ubuntu and Debian, this is the command that we used. In the case that you have, for instance, Fedora or CentOS, you would use this command, and if you use, for instance, Arch Linux, you would use this command. In our case, we use this command because we are using a Ubuntu operating system. Very important, make sure that you double check this before running the command. I'm going to clear the screen again just to get the space a bit cleaner, and then now the main gig is going to begin. We're going to download the Huddle01 application. Now you do so using this command here, press enter, and what this is going to do is it's going to download the Huddle01 application. The good thing is that the Huddle01 path has been added to our shell configuration. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reload our shell configuration so that it picks up this new installation. Now the reason why we want to do this is that wherever that we are in the console, we want to be able to use the Huddle specific commands without having to go into that folder. Now to reload the shell configuration, just like they say here, please restart your terminal or source your shell configuration file. Now to do so, just copy this command here, paste in that command into your terminal, and then press enter, and it basically reloads your shell configuration. Now the next stage, what we're going to do is to verify that the Huddle01 installation was successful. To do so, I'm going to clear the screen again, but remember, you do not need to do this. I just do this for the tutorial to be a bit clean. And we're going to put in this command here, Huddle --version, and then press enter. And then you can see that our installation was successful because it already tells us which Huddle01 version that we have. Now with the next stage, we're going to start by creating a a burner wallet address. Now the burner wallet address is the address that you would use to create the pool on the Huddle01 dashboard, and this burner wallet address would connect your keys to your hardware node or to the node that we are setting up here. Now to create a burner wallet address, we're going to use the command Huddle wallet configure and press enter. And then if this is the first time you're doing this, it's going to ask you if you want them to auto-generate a wallet for you. If you already have an existing wallet that probably you set up from your node and you are really migrating your node to another server, then you can put in the private key of that wallet. But if this is the first time that you are setting up the node and you do not have any node set up before, then you can basically press enter and this would also generate a new address for you. And then here you can see that a new wallet was created for us with the public key of the wallet and also the address of the wallet. Now, very important, make sure that you stay true to the end of the video because I'm going to show you how you can back up the private keys of this wallet so that if anything happens to your VPS server and you have to, for instance, reinstall your server, you can basically use the same wallet that was created here for you. But it's very, very important because if people have delegated their keys to your node and if something happens to your VPS server, it would be advisable to use the same wallet credentials so that you do not have to delete your node on the Huddle01 dashboard. I'm going to show you how you can do this shortly. So now we have the public key of our wallet, we have the burner wallet address. In the next stage, we have to proceed to register this node on the Huddle01 dashboard. Now to do so, just copy this address that we have here, and in PowerShell, whenever you highlight anything, it copies this directly. So now we're going to come to the Huddle01 dashboard. If you come and you are at this section here, which is the home, just come down here and go to pool. Now when you're on the pools page, you basically see a lot of pools that are currently available, but we want to create our own pool. So to do so, come to create pool here, and then here you can upload a picture of whatever you want the pool to look like. For instance, in my case, you see that I have for one of the nodes my logo here, which is basically an identifier for my node. If you want, you can also upload the logo, but this is not a mandatory field. Now what is mandatory is you need to give your pool a name. So in my case, just one example, I'm going to call this the Pen Inspiration Hub tutorial. Please do not delegate to this pool because I'm going to delete this after the installation. And after that, you're going to put in a burner wallet address. Now this burner wallet address is the address that we found from the node, which is this address here. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come to the dashboard. I'm going to paste in the wallet address. Here you can select the number of keys that you want to delegate to this pool. Now very important, it always shows you the number of idle keys that you have, but in my case, I want to bind only one key to this particular node that I'm setting up. Because I have two idle keys, I want to set up two pools so that I would have two delegation pools where people that can delegate to me. So here, just put in the number of your idle keys that you want to bind to this particular node. Like I said, I have two idle keys, but for this example, I'm going to bind only one to this node. And very, very, very important, this is where you choose the number of delegation pools that you want. In the case that you're setting up for the 10 delegation pool, make sure that you choose this one. If you're going for the 40, choose this one. But please only choose the pool specification that meets the specifications of your VPS server, especially the internet requirement. Because if, for instance, if you go for the 40 delegation pool and your VPS or your system has a low internet speed, your node would be going offline most of the time. Now in our case, this is what we have, so I'm going to go with this one here. And in the next stage, you're going to put in the commissions that you want to take from those who delegate to you. So for instance, if you put 5%, it means that whenever someone delegates their keys to your node, you're going to take 5% of their rewards. And then here, very important, if you want to approve every delegation that comes to your node, then you're going to click require approval for delegation. Now this comes in very handy. For instance, in my case where I set up a 0% commission for my community, I don't want anyone to delegate to it for free. I only want this to be restricted to my community, and that is why I chose this option. But typically, if you want to open the pool for anyone to delegate to you, you do not need to go for the require approval for delegation. Now afterwards, go through everything. If everything is fine, click on create pool. I don't know why my screen is shaking, maybe something is wrong with my PC. Now what you're going to have to do is to confirm the transaction here. My apologies for the vibrating screen. I'm going to click confirm, and then I get a notification that my pool was created successfully. So I can close this one here, and then you can now see the new pool that I set up, the Pen Inspiration Hub YouTube, and you can see the status not running because we haven't run this pool yet. So now that we have set up our pool successfully, the next thing that we can do is to basically start the node. And to do so, we're going to use the command huddle node start -d. The -d just starts the node as a detachable version in the background. I'll just put in enter, and then you can see first time starting your node, setup required, don't stop more than the step necessary. And when everything is done, you would see in the confirmation, media node worker found, media node started successfully with this PID. Now if you want to check the status of the node, you can just use the command huddle node status and then press enter, and then it tells you that the media node is running with this PID. So now when I come back to the Huddle01 dashboard, you see that the status of our node has now changed from not started to running. And when I click on this, you can see that I currently have one key delegated to it, which is the one that I chose myself for the delegation. Currently we have 0 rewards because we just started this node up. This is the commission that we set up, which was 5%. This is the uptime that we have, and this is the downtime that we have. And if you want to undelegate or delete this pool, you can basically come here, undelegate, and then delete the pool. As more people delegate their node to you, the numbers here would keep increasing. Like in my case, where I have 40 means that I have saturated my delegations, but a lot of people delegating to me. If you have 110, it means that you have one key delegated to you from the total of 10. So basically from the node setup perspective, that's all that you need to do. The node up and running at this moment. But there are a few tips that I'm going to give to you with respect to your node management. So please stay tuned and let's go through that as well. Now, should there be a new version of the Huddle01 media nodes, it's always advisable that you update your node. Now to update your node, first stop the node using the command. Maybe let me clear the screen just to make it a bit cleaner for you again. First, stop the node by using the command huddle node stop and then press enter, and then it tells you your media node is stopped successfully. If you want to update the node, use the command huddle node update and then press enter, and then you can see updating the node, and then it tells you media node downloaded successfully, media node setup complete. After you have updated the software, now you can restart the software. By the way, I'm using up on the keyboard to basically recall all the commands that I did initially. So after you have updated the node, you can now start the node again using the command that we used initially, huddle node start -d, and then your media node would be started. So basically that's it about how you can update the node. If you're not very sure if you're running the latest version of the application, you can also use the command like we used before, huddle version, which will tell you the latest version of the software, which is currently in my case 1.0.4. If you want to verify this version, you can also come to the Huddle01 dashboard. Under this section here you have guides, and then when you scroll down you would find updates your media node. Then here you would also find all the commands that you need. So you would see that currently they say that a newer version is 1.0.4, which is exactly what we saw for our node. So that means that we are running the updated version. Now in the next stage, I'm going to show you how to export the private key of your wallet. Like I said, it's very important that you export a private key, because should anything happen to your media node, you want to be able to reset up the media node without you having to delete your pool on the dashboard. It would be very embarrassing if you have to delete the pool because you lost the credentials to your private key, your media node. Now to export a private key, just use the command. Let me clear the screen here first. Just use the command huddle wallet details and then press enter. And then it tells you wallets found for media node. This is the public key. Do you want to show the private key? Capital Y for yes, and then small n for no. So type in capital Y and then press enter, and then it shows you the private key. Don't worry, I'm exposing the private key, but I'm not gonna use this node for anything, so I don't really matter about it. And then it shows you the private key of your Huddle01, and this is the private key that you're gonna use if you want to reinstall the node and use the same wallet credentials like before. And if you remember, when we were setting up the Huddle01 node, they asked us to enter a private key if we already have a node, and this is the point where you're going to put in the private keys of your Huddle01 burner wallet. So that's it about how to run a Huddle01 node yourself. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm going to put all my contact information in the description section, and also the Huddle01 Discord community is also there, and the guys there would be always happy to help you. If you found this video helpful, please remember to hit the thumbs up button. Thanks, and see you in the next one.